Seattle's socialist mayor is back in the news, and as you would expect, it's for all the wrong reasons. She was just absolutely humiliated before international cameras as the World Cup came to Seattle. Entire neighborhoods are rising up against her soft-on-crime approach. Businesses are abandoning the city like never before, leaving behind an unprecedented commercial real estate vacancy that is decimating Seattle. The city is collapsing, and more residents have had it, and she hasn't even been in office for a year. Welcome to the Marxist implosion, and it's just getting started. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else, so make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. As the World Cup draws to a close this weekend, much of the world's eyes have been on the city of Seattle over the last several weeks, which was one of the dozen or so cities hosting the games. And while Seattle's waterfront was packed, while Pioneer Square was electric, Seattle's Chinatown International District was a ghost town. Business owners in Chinatown and Little Saigon reported a 10 to 20% decline in sales during the World Cup. When the world was pouring into the city, it was the most foot traffic Seattle was seen in years, and Chinatown was missing out entirely. And as it turns out, it was because their neighborhood had been so overrun by open-air drug dealing, homeless encampments, and crime that tourists and fans wouldn't set foot on it. And so the Chinese and Vietnamese community members who've lived and worked there for generations took to the streets, not to cheer on the U.S. team, but to protest their own mayor, the Democrat socialist Katie Wilson, right in front of the World Cup crowds. And Wilson's response? Crickets. Nothing. According to Fox News, she has yet to even issue a statement regarding the myriad of complaints coming from this once bustling part of the city. This is a socialist promise meeting the brutality of reality. Creepy Katie ran on being the champion of marginalized communities, communities of color, immigrant communities, and all this sort of thing. And yet, when members of those very communities came out to beg her to effectively respond to their concerns, crickets. So now the communities that she supposedly championed are calling her a human dumping ground manager on camera during the World Cup in front of the entire world. But that's nothing. It gets far worse than that. Up on Aurora Avenue on Seattle's north side, residents spend an entire Memorial Day weekend building their own barricades. Steel flower planters, concrete blocks, anything they could find to physically block off their own streets because of weeks of shootings, high-speed chases, prostitution, human trafficking, and drug turf wars. That's what a neighborhood looks like when its government has failed it completely. And when the city finally showed up, what do you think they did? I bet you can guess. What do you think they did? When they showed up, they did not show up to fix the crime. They showed up to remove the barricades. The city took away the planters and the blocks the residents built to protect themselves, and they replaced them, I kid you not, with little traffic bumps to slow the cars down ever so slightly. Obviously, residents said it just added insult to injury. And Wilson, once again, went silent. In fact, that's not true. She reportedly said, she responded by saying that, quote, she needed to study the situation. Study it. Needless to say, in light of all the bullets going through people's homes and human trafficking running openly in the streets, the people of Aurora Avenue didn't need a study. They needed a mayor. And instead, they got a community organizer with a clipboard. But again, if you thought that that was bad, we haven't seen anything yet. The economic devastation coming to Seattle is beyond anything anyone could have imagined in their worst nightmares. And at its center, of course, is none other than old, creepy Kate. But first, gang, what if I told you there's a little-known arbitrage play hiding inside a $30 billion market, and regular people with zero background in finance or tech are quietly generating $5,000, $10,000, even $20,000 a month from it, using nothing but a laptop. I know it sounds almost too good to be true, but here's what's actually going on. There's a significant and very real pricing gap in the used book market. The same book can be worth dramatically different amounts depending on where it's listed. And the people who've learned how to spot and exploit that price gap are building serious, sustainable income. And what makes this unlike anything else that I've come across is you never actually handle a single book. There's no physical inventory sitting in your garage, no trips to the post office, no physical logistics whatsoever. The whole thing runs from your browser. You identify the opportunity, you make a few clicks, and the fulfillment side is handled entirely by someone else. And I want to be clear, this isn't, a side hustle that just pads your grocery budget. This is a real business model that people are running full time right now. Many of them haven't walked away from jobs they didn't love in the first place. That's why I'm personally hosting a free training on Monday, July 20th, where I'm going to walk you through exactly how this system works, start to finish. No filler, no theory, just the actual mechanics of how to find the opportunities and what to do with them. I'm going deep on this, and I'm genuinely excited to show you what I found. Click the link below or type bkprofit.com/Turley into your browser or scan the QR code on your screen to reserve your free spot right now. Again, you do not want to miss this one. Click on that link below right now. One of Creepy Katie's first acts after taking office was publicly calling for a boycott of Starbucks, one of Seattle's most iconic companies, the company that puts Seattle on the global cultural map, the company that employs thousands upon thousands of Seattle residents. Well, Starbucks was engaged in a labor dispute with its barista workers union, and she sided with the striking workers and thus called for a boycott against Starbucks. That was her opening move as mayor, and the response from Starbucks was brutal. They announced a $100 million expansion and 2,000 new jobs in Nashville, Tennessee, a state with zero income tax and a Republican governor that's more than happy to welcome them there. Not Seattle, Nashville. And it didn't stop there. In May of this year, Starbucks announced 300 more corporate layoffs in, well, what do you know, the city of Seattle. Seattle's headquarters is technically being retained in name only, but the trajectory is unmistakable. The company that Wilson boycotted is voting with its feet, its capital, and its jobs, and it's voting away from Socialist Seattle. And then, as if that weren't embarrassing enough, the New York Times published an interview with this Marxist mayor, and the reporter asked Wilson if she regretted her boycott of Starbucks, and she admitted that the boycott caused far more harm than good. And keep in mind, this harm isn't to her. It's to her constituents in Seattle who no longer have jobs, who are seeing their tax base shrivel up and watching their city begin to shrink. And then in the very same interview, I kid you not, she did her best to save face. She went out and said, I have a great relationship with Starbucks, and I absolutely want them to stay in Seattle because we're such good friends. You know, the company she boycotted. The company she boycotted. A boycott is literally an economic sanction. The company she publicly told her constituents to stop buying from, now she's their best friend. They have a great relationship. I mean, this is the very definition of backpedaling. And it all looks to be too little too late because, as it turns out, as you may have guessed, this was not an isolated case of one company. There's been nothing less than a mass exodus of businesses from Seattle. Jeff Bezos, he moved from Seattle to Miami years ago, and the explicit reason was to avoid Washington's capital gains tax. That single departure cost Washington state hundreds of millions in projected annual revenue. Washington's new 9.9% millionaires tax was supposed to be a revenue bonanza. Instead, high earners are restructuring their finances, relocating their domiciles, and quietly exiting. And the revenue projections, as you would guess, are plummeting. But again, it gets worse. Seattle's progressive tax, what's known as their jumpstart payroll tax, that was sold as making the rich pay their fair share. The result? 30,000 downtown jobs gone. Office property values down 48%. The worst commercial real estate vacancy rate in any major city in the country, over 35%. And the property tax burden quietly shifted off the empty towers and onto ordinary Seattle families, who now carry, get this, 83% of the county's tax burden, up from 65% before the exodus began. From 65% now to 83%. The socialists promised to tax the rich left, and now the bill has to go to the people who couldn't afford a moving truck to Bellevue. Jeff Bezos moved to Miami years ago. Starbucks is in Nashville. Amazon is in Bellevue. The millionaires got on a plane. The working class residents, they're stuck. They got the invoice. They always do. That's the iron law these municipal socialists refuse to learn. You don't get more of what you punish. You always get less. And that's the lesson in all of this, if Seattle's constituents bother to learn it. Seattle isn't a freak accident, is but the latest victim of the rise of what is technically referred to as municipal socialism. And it's spreading, right? Portland, Chicago, of course, New York City. These cities are all running the same playbook, and they will all arrive at the same destination because there is one economic law that no city council vote can repeal. Finance is fluid. Finance is fluid. Capital is not a fixed pool of wealth sitting there waiting to be taxed. Capital is like water. It flows where it's welcomed, and it flees where it's punished. Every single time, in every era, in every country that's ever tried this experiment, and now in every city. And remember, Katie Wilson won by less than 1% of the vote. It was the slimmest margin of victory since 1906 in Seattle politics. Because this is what these municipal socialists always do. They barely squeak by because of their radical economics. Their radical economics ends up splitting their own left coalition. The Bill Maher half of the left wants nothing to do with them. And then, once they get in, by the slimmest of margins, they govern as if they had a mandate from the heavens until reality bills them. And unfortunately for creepy Katie and the city of Seattle, that bill has come due.